Oh no, oh.
I think I have to reintroduce myself. My name is Alex, and yes, I do videos on valet stories. I must apologize, I've been away for almost 3 weeks, and if it wasn't for Dave, I'm going to call you out. He actually messaged me this morning. He's like, Alex, what's going on? We haven't seen a video in almost 3 weeks. And I say, hey, you know what? I have great stories planned. I just haven't had time to sit down and record them because I'm running left and right. Work is doing really well. We actually need more valets because we're actually picking up more accounts, or the accounts that we do have, they want to expand hours. So we do need to hire probably another 5 or 10 more valets, but that's going to come probably in the next couple of weeks, but we're always looking. Anyway, work has been crazy, and on top of that, we've had a few accidents, which we'll discuss in the next story. But this one was so wild, and as I always promise you, you would not believe this stuff if we didn't get some of this stuff on video. So this time, Atlanta is kind of known, if you live over in this area, to have water problems. We have really bad sewer systems. And what happened, the sewer systems are made from, I guess, the 30s, 40s, and they haven't really been updated. So the streets will flood really quickly. In fact, in 2009, there was a devastating rainfall, and it flooded a good portion, or many different cities in Atlanta, some of the smaller cities. And it was so bad, it was one of the worst rains in a century, and I think it happened probably 10 to 15 inches of rain in a matter of a couple of days. And what happened, one of my personal friends, she got completely flooded out of her house. And what happened with her, she actually went to sleep and she got a knock on the door. She had kind of a split level home. So she got a knock on the door at about 2 o'clock in the morning saying, get out of the house, get out of the house. So she freaks out. She opens up the front door, and he is in a boat at her front door on the second level. So her and her brother get in a boat and they float away. This whole neighborhood was underwater. A lot of houses were affected almost to the second story, and it was pretty amazing. So we got the call the next day. We went over to help her because honestly, everything she had was ruined. Both of her cars were destroyed. All the personal stuff, the water had creeped up onto the second level. And we were concerned that if she had not been woken up by the neighbor, what would have woken her up? Would it have been the water surrounding her bed and she would have heard it? It was utterly insane. There were over 20,000 homes that were affected at that point. And unfortunately, she didn't have flood insurance because she wasn't in a flood zone when she initially bought the house. But the federal government stood in and they actually bought her out of her house, and she was able to buy another house anyway. Anyway, Alex, why are you bringing this up? What does this have to do with anything? Well, it almost happened again. It almost happened like 2 weeks ago that I got a phone call one night, and one of my valets is like, hey, this restaurant happens to sit at a kind of a low point of an intersection, and there are a lot of sewers around, and it was raining a lot, and it had been raining for quite a few days. So what happened, the water level started to rise to the point where it was making the valet uncomfortable. He's like, hey, this water's starting to enter into the parking lot, and we're at the highest point of this restaurant. So he goes down to the restaurant, and would you have it, it is starting to enter into the restaurant. So at this point, the restaurant not shuts down, because this is about 5:30, 6 o'clock. So there are people that are actually sitting at the table. So they have to shut down the kitchen first and foremost because emergency. So they shut all the power off immediately. Now water's starting to gush into the restaurant. So we have 2 valets there. We have one valet stay in the parking lot and tell people, hey, the restaurant's closed. They're not going to honor your reservation right now, but as soon as we get the situation fixed, if we can get the situation fixed, then they'll open the restaurant back up as quickly as possible. So a lot of people elected to stay in the parking lot and do what they needed to do, while the other valet was actually inside the restaurant helping the staff push this water out of the restaurant. Well, that's going on at the same time. Then another lady's trying to enter into our parking lot. And this is really crazy because she gets stuck. And as you could tell in some of these pictures, she's completely stuck. But what happened, a gentleman noticed it and actually stopped to try to help her. He stopped his car, and he was kind of on the high side, so he was actually not deep into the water. But when he went, he was almost like knee deep, trying to help this lady at least out of the car. Don't worry about your car. Let's get you out into safety. Because back in 2009, there were 10 people that died. All 10 of those people were in vehicles. They didn't die in their homes. They died in vehicles because they were driving into water that was deeper than they thought. So anyway, this guy went to try to help this lady out of the car and get her situated. And then you want to guess what happened? That's right. Within probably 3 minutes, the water level was rising so high that it made his, I think it was a Mercedes C-Class, buoyant to the level of it started to float away. You cannot believe it, as you can see here in this video. So as you can tell, this Mercedes is starting to float away, and as you can also see, the windshield wipers are on. So what does that mean? That means that his car is running. And now that his car is floating and it is starting to sink, that means his engine is taking on water, which means his engine is now destroyed. He took in water, he hydrolocked the engine. That means the car is now total because the engine is toast. I would like to sit and see what the insurance company is going to say about this one, how he explains how this really happened. But he was able to obviously stop the car. But the fact that the water, just a basic principle, if you get water into your engine and it comes in by way of the intake, and that's generally how it comes in, then it will flood out your combustion chambers, and that's it. It's toast. You cannot start that engine again, and that engine is destroyed. So unfortunately, he totaled out the car by helping another person. The other car, which I think was a Volkswagen Golf, that was also totaled because she drove into the water and it was to the point where it couldn't take it. Now, you may ask, hey, Alex, I've seen other cars drive into the water before and they're not damaged, but those have snorkels. So a lot of times you'll see an SUV or some of these big trucks that are made to go in the water, but they have these big snorkels that sit above the roof line. That means they're only getting in dry air and they're not getting in water. So that's how that happens. But in these particular cases, of course, these people weren't prepared to drive into water. You'll see so many situations where people are like, do not drive into water because it's extremely dangerous. But here in Atlanta, what the crazy part is, within, because the valets called me, they're freaking out. They're like, you would not believe it, this lady's, and I didn't even try to head down there because I knew I wasn't going to get down there in time, but they took pictures and videos and supplied them to me. Anyway, within an hour, I knew the drains and the sewers would catch up. And basically, that's what happened. So within an hour, they were able to drain all the water out of the restaurant. All the reservations got pushed back about an hour and a half for those people who decided to stay. And surprisingly, there were quite a few people that wanted to wait. And the people that were inside the restaurant, they were able to finish their meals. And they have a story and adventure to tell their kids or loved ones next time. But as for the valets ended up staying there. They wanted to leave, but I know this restaurant, they're going to try to open as quickly as possible so they can serve the community. Everything went great. Everybody had a wonderful time. And needless to say, it was a pretty crazy night. But this thing happens all the time. Atlanta is known for its bad flood waters and storms, and basically it's called the watershed system. And what the watershed system is, it's basically when rain falls into an environment, where does that water go? Does it go into the grass? Does it go into ponds? Does it go into other different type areas? That's called a watershed. And the watershed couldn't keep up. We had rain coming in from the Gulf of Mexico, which is down there, Texas and Florida on that side, the Panhandle. And then we had also at the same time rain coming in from the Atlantic Ocean, which is the Carolinas and everything. And when it converged on top of Atlanta, it just pretty much soaked us for a matter of days. And the system couldn't keep up with it, so that's why we have the flooding that comes into play. So hopefully this shouldn't happen again, but again, this is some of the crazy stuff that we constantly see in our parking lots. And this is the same parking lot, if you recall, there was a tornado that went through it, 10 years ago. This is that same exact parking lot. So I think there's something about this area. But anyway, it keeps it interesting. It keeps it fun. But again, I apologize for not being there. I'm actually going to record another video for next week. So you'll get another video probably Tuesday next week. So please stay tuned. And again, thank you for watching.